Hello everybody, welcome. Soaring Eagle, hello, welcome in, how are you? I am doing well, thank you. I hope you be well too. It's been a while. You're okay? Nice. That is good to hear. Yes, ma'am. Well, there we go, that is good. Let me just reduce the volume a little bit more. Lane, hello! Jeepers, all the cool cats are popping in today. Let's make that at 10%. If it's still a bit loud, let me know. How are you, Lane? Welcome. Also let me know if there is buffering going on, because South Africa had a DDoS attack last week, so the internet is still not quite stable. So yes, please let me know if there is some instability. Good. Just playing some Stardew Valley. Nice and cozy. Let's go. You were raised to say yes ma'am and all that, even if folks are younger than me. Ah, there we go. Yeah, I was also taught to be respectful with yes sir and all that good stuff. Even if they are younger than me, it still feels good to, do that. You have a friend that lives in Port Elizabeth. Or the new name, which is kind of difficult to say. I have to see the spelling. I'm not gonna attempt it now. You are younger than me. Well, then shouldn't it be? Okay, well, yeah, I suppose ma'am is correct, because miss is for unmarried young ladies, I think. You could also just call me young lady. If ma'am feels a little bit awkward. Is it with a G in the front, or is it with a Q? Hold on. You'll be 60 in August. Spring chicken, let's go! You still have a lot of years in you, let's go! Say Miss Wolf or Miss Maria. That also works. I'm not too particular about things. It is fun though. Port. I spelled that wrong. It is with a G. The G is silent though. Mrs. for married. Miss for not married. MS for not sure. What is the MS? Is that like Miss? Because I've always read it as Miss. You see, this is the thing with these like abbreviation kind of things. that completely throw me off. No, I'm a full chicken. A full chicken? Because you're always falling. Oh no! Well, actually, the floors call emergency meetings with either my face or backbite. That's one way of looking at it. Alright, so Peberja. That's how you say it. But it's quite the concentration to say that one. Not many can say it. And yes, you have to. And that's not always heard on the mic. The click. Because the Q is a click. Very difficult name to say. I don't know why they thought of calling Port Elizabeth Preberja. So difficult to say. Especially if you haven't said it in a while. But there we go. Since the floor since the floor like calling meetings so much, maybe you must do some balancing exercises. I am from South Africa. And don't worry, I also forget where a lot of people are from. Cool. And the way you spelled that cool is cabbage in Afrikaans. Cool. Cabbage. Yeah, Georgia, USA. Let's go. And you're from Alabama. Oh, you're in Alabama, but that's not from. Oh, you just live there. Okay. Oh well, if you live there, then you're from there, right? At least that's how I see it. I could be wrong. No, they could be from New York and live in Alabama. Yeah, you've got that right. Yep. I didn't think of it that way. I did not think of it that way. Indeed, indeed. Alrighty, folks. Let us do our quick prayer and then we hop into the reading of Moby Dick. Sometimes when I start reading this book, I feel like I have to give some sort of warning or something, but I never do. So buckle up, folks. Oh well, I didn't know. Cool meant cabbage. Yeah. Yeah, because English, when you do it with the C, it's cool. And we use that here as well because we have a lot of slang in our language as well. You know, just because of how many languages we have here, and all of them are basically official languages except for English and some other languages that also float around here. So yeah, a lot of slang in Afrikaans. But cool, like you spelt it there, is 100% Afrikaans, and it's cabbage. Are you from Indiana, but was raised in Alabama? Aha. I just like to spell some words differently on purpose. Yeah, it's more fun that way. I do the same sometimes. Well, a lot of times. Like, thanks. Incorporating that TH at the end there. Thanks. Let me get my book ready. There we go. Alrighty, do let me know during when I read whether or not the music's too loud, because yesterday was a little bit loud. Today I'm using a different browser, so it might be too loud again. So yes, please do let me know. I'm gonna be rude to the song. So yeah, let's do a quick prayer and then we hop right in. Thank you, Lord, for this beautiful day you blessed us with. Thank you for family, friends, and community. Lord, I pray you bless everyone who joins me here today or who watches the VOD. Lord, we pray for those who are currently struggling with their health. We pray that you bless them with healing, strength, and endurance for both them and their families and medical support. Please be with them and bless them with all the knowledge that they need, Lord. And we pray for all the countries that's currently struggling with turmoil and violence in their streets. We pray that you bless all the people with protection, Lord, and guide them safely home should they find themselves in trouble. We pray for peace over these countries as we pray for peace over Israel, O Lord. May your shining light of peace shine not only on us, but all over the world. Lord, we would like to thank you for all the rain that you've sent our way. We pray that you keep those who are in dangerous areas safe and guide them home when they get lost in all the confusion and the floods. Keep them safe, Lord. And guide those who are out to rescue them. Guide them and their colleagues, Lord, and give them strength through all of this. We pray this for all the areas of the world that's struggling with flooding right now. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen. There we go. We've been getting a lot of rain, although it's been slowing down now. But yeah, could also be part of the reason why the internet is so slow. However, the DDoS attacks, or the DDoS attacks, has been quite the thorn in our internet sides. Although I have to say, today, it's a little bit more stable, but I can see it wants to drop. I can see it. I'm watching those numbers. Let's go! Right. Where is it? Okay, hold on. I never went and refreshed my camera. Apologies for the black screen. Here we go. Tuscaloosa. Raining here for over a week and a half. Wow. Told my mom, as this rain keeps up, I'll have to borrow Noah's Ark. I bet. Because that's the only boat that will float. Alright. Let us see here. Okay, that one still needs to move a bit. This one needs to move a bit. Apologies for the shaky camera work. Ah yes. Our handy dandy helper of keeping up with where we are in the reading. Have you guys ever read or saw any of the movies of this story? What are we reading? We are reading Moby Dick, also known as The Whale. I kind of like this one's cover. It's got a nice cover. It's got some nice gold on the edges. You've never read it? Have you seen any of the movie adaptations? I've seen one. Many moons and seasons ago, when I was but a wee little one. Oh mercy, that book. Had to read it in the 8th grade. What? This over 600-page book you had to read in school? "614 pages of story, and then we've got an epilogue. The end. That's brutal." Makes me think of that scene from the movie Matilda where she was reading the book. Was that one of the books that she was reading? It was a 6-week semester. Yeah, I bet. I've been at this book now for probably about the same. Maybe actually a bit longer. But then again, I've been on and off, and I have reading weeks because, yeah. Christopher, hello, welcome in. You are just in time. I'm about to get into this. But yeah, unlike in school where you're not allowed to skip chapters, I have given myself permission to skip certain sidetrack stories, so I can actually keep track of the actual story. Because, yeah. Going off on those weird tangents and stuff, I completely lose track of the story and then I just want to stop reading. So, in order to stop me from giving up completely, I have permitted myself to skip some. Also, a heads up, I may do some complaining, but I will try not to, and you have the right to bonk spam me, if I do. Thank you for the lurk, Lane. I nearly called you Len, I don't know why. But thank you for the lurk. Much appreciated. Please do let me know if the music is still too loud. So glad that you're here. I'm so glad that you're here too. Let's go. Back in the day, we had 4 6-week semesters for school. May have been the same for me, but I never got further than 4th grade. And then I went into homeschooling and I just did it a whole different way. You're doing sort of good? Wish I could get rid of my asthma. Ah, yes, the asthma. Ugh, it's rough stuff that. I can't breathe, but I can hear it wheezing. Oh man. It's fine. So it's fine if I complain. Okay, you probably mean the music is fine. Let us then start, shall we? And also do let me know again if the internet drops so that I can stop reading and just go back a little bit so you guys can not miss out on too much. I'm translating GNU at the moment. Nice! You're almost done. Alrighty, cool stuff. Chapter 87. The Grand Armada. I'm not sure if this is direct to the story, but I'm gonna read this one because there is some dialogue in here towards the end of this chapter. So let us see. Otherwise, I'll just skip a section if it doesn't pertain to the story. The teachers loved me so much in 7th grade they kept me a second year. Nice. You only had 24 Fs? Wow. Yeah, my books were empty. My last teacher wasn't exactly the greatest. And my books were empty, so she thought I was as empty-headed as my books' pages were. All they would get is a date, and if they were lucky, a line. Depending on how generous I felt that day. And then they decided to do a surprise test to see if I was as empty-headed as they thought I was. My parents were sitting in the office with the principal, and I had a score that had me in the top 3 of the class. And then my dad's like, yeah, she's not coming back to the school. So, homeschooling was what I ended up doing after that. Your home life growing up was not a good one. Sorry to hear that. And my home life was pretty good. It was just school that was absolute torture for me. But it's alright. It's made me strong. But the one who makes me even stronger is our good Lord. And He is awesome. Alrighty, let us do this. Because I'm using chat as an excuse not to read this book. We must face the giant whale in the room. Chapter 87, The Grand Armada. The long and narrow peninsula of Malacca extended southeastward from the territories of Burma, forms the most southerly point of all Asia. In a continuous line from that peninsula stretched the long islands of Sumatra, Java, Bali, and Timor, which, with many others, form a vast mole or rampart, lengthwise connecting Asia with Australia, and dividing the long unbroken Indian Ocean from the thickly studded Oriental archipelagos. Can you guys read that? Probably not. This rampart is pierced by several sally ports for the convenience of ships and whales, conspicuous among which are the Straits of Sunda and Malacca. By the Straits of Sunda, chiefly, vessels bound to China from the west emerge into the China Seas. And do feel free to continue chatting. I'll catch up once I take a break. Those narrow Straits of Sunda divide Sumatra from Java, and standing midway in that vast rampart of islands, buttressed by that bold green promontory. I cut it right there. Yeah. Buttressed. I forget the meaning of that word, so we are going to write it down, because we have a list of words. And then afterwards, we shall bring out the darlingest of dictionaries, the Encarta. At least it's my darling. Alright. Buttressed. And promontory? I'm not sure what that means either. Jen, hello, welcome in. Jeepers, all the cool cats, like seriously all the cool cats are coming in today. Okay. We have our word. How is you, Jen? Right. Buttressed by that bold green promontory known to seamen as Java Head, they not a little correspond to the central gateway opening into some vast walled empire, and considering the inexhaustible wealth of spices and silks and jewels and gold and ivory with which the 1,000 islands of that oriental sea are enriched, it seemed a significant provision of nature that such treasures, by the very formation of the land, should at least bear the appearance, however ineffectual, of being guarded from the all-grasping Western world. The shores of the Straits of Sunda are unsupplied with those domineering fortresses which guard the entrances to the Mediterranean, the Baltic, and the Propontis. Unlike the Danes, these Orientals do not demand the obsequious homage of lowered topsails from the endless procession of ships before the wind, which for centuries past, by night and by day, have passed between the islands of Sumatra and Java, freighted with the costliest cargoes of the East. Alright. That's another word, I'm not sure what it means. Obsequious. You're okay. How am I doing? I'm doing good, thank you. And so is my internet today. It's much more stable than it was on Monday. And we are getting a lot of words in today's chapters. Not sure if we've gotten this word before. I don't think so. Let me see. Nope, we have not. So it is a brand new word, indeed. Okay. They all slipped in under the covers, I'm sure. But, a moment ago they were all very busy. Very chatty. And I think they've all turned on the cozy mode. Okay. Right, so freighted with the costliest cargoes of the East. But while they freely weave a ceremonial like this with... The sentence doesn't seem to make sense. Alright. Anyway. But while they freely weave a ceremonial like this, they do by no means renounce their claim to more solid tribute. Time out of mind, the piratical prowess of the Malays lurking among the low-shaded coves and islets of Sumatra have sailed out upon the vessels sailing through the straits, fiercely demanding tribute at the point of their spears. Though by the repeated bloody chastisements they have received at the hands of European cruisers, the audacity of these corsairs has of late been somewhat repressed. Yet even at the present day we occasionally hear of English and American vessels which, in those waters, have been remorselessly boarded and pillaged. Ouch. With a fair, fresh wind, the Pequod was now drawing nigh to the straits, Ahab purposing to pass through them into the Java Sea, and hence cruising northwards, over waters known to be frequented here and there by the sperm whale, sweep inshore by the Philippine Islands, and gain the far coast of Japan, in time for the great whaling season there. By these means the circumnavigating Pequod would sweep almost all the known sperm whale cruising grounds of the world, previous to descending upon the line in the Pacific, where Ahab, though everywhere else foiled in his pursuit, firmly counted upon giving battle to Moby Dick, in the sea he was most known to frequent, and at the season where he might most reasonably be presumed to be haunting it. Okay, so this is directly related to the story, this chapter, which is good. But how now, in this zoned quest, does Ahab touch no land? Does his crew drink air? Surely he will stop for water. Nay. For a long time now, this circus-running sun had raced within his fiery ring, and needs no sustenance but what's in himself. So Ahab, mark this too, in the whaler. While other hulls are loaded down with alien stuff to be transferred to foreign wharves, the world-wandering whale ship carries no cargo but herself and crew, their weapons and their wants. She has a whole lake's contents bottled in her ample hold. She is ballasted with utilities, not altogether with unusable pig lead and Kentledge. She carries years' water in her. Clear old prime Nantucket water, which, when 3 years afloat, the Nantucketer in the Pacific prefers to drink before the brackish fluid, but yesterday rafted off in casks from the Peruvian or Indian streams. Hence it is that, while other ships may have gone to China from New York and back again touching at a score of ports, the whale ship, in all that interval, may not have sighted one grain of soil. Thank you for the alert, Creepy Crow, and God bless you too, good sir. Her crew, having seen no man but floating seamen like themselves, so that did not you carry them the news that another flood had come, they would only answer, "Well, boys, here's the ark." Now, as many sperm whales have been captured off the western coast of Java, in the near vicinity of the Straits of Sunda, indeed, as most of the ground round about was generally recognized by the fishermen as an excellent spot for cruising, therefore, as the Pequod gained more and more upon Java Head, the lookouts were repeatedly hailed and admonished to keep wide awake. But though the green palmy cliffs of the land soon loomed on the starboard bow, and with delighted nostrils the fresh cinnamon was sniffed in the air, yet not a single jet was descried. Almost renouncing all thought of falling in with any game hereabouts, the ship had well nigh entered the straits, when the customary cheering cry was heard from aloft, and ere long a spectacle of singular magnificence saluted us. But here be it premised that owing to the unwearied activity with which of late they have been hunted over all four oceans, the sperm whales, instead of almost invariably sailing in small detached companies, as in former times, are now frequently met within extensive herds, sometimes embracing so great a multitude that it would almost seem as numerous nations of them had sworn solemn league and covenant for mutual assistance and protection. To this aggregation of the sperm whale into such immense caravans may be imputed the circumstance that even in the best cruising grounds you may now sometimes sail for weeks and months together without being greeted by a single spout, and then be suddenly saluted by what sometimes seems thousands on thousands. Broad on both bows, at the distance of some 2 or 3 miles, and forming a great semicircle, embracing one half of the level horizon, a continuous chain of whale jets were up-playing and sparkling in the noonday air, unlike the straight perpendicular twin jets of the right whale, which, dividing at top, fall over in 2 branches, like the cleft, drooping boughs of a willow, The single forward slanting spout of the sperm whale presents a thick curled bush of white mist, continually rising and falling away to leeward. Madame Jen, if you are there, please do let me know if my internet drops a little bit while I'm reading. I wanted to start early today, but yeah, did not work out so well. Alrighty. Seen from the Pequod's deck, then, as she would rise on a high hill of the sea, this host of vapory spouts, individually curling up into the air, and beheld through a blending atmosphere of bluish haze, showed like the 1,000 cheerful chimneys of some dense metropolis, described as a balmy autumnal morning by some horseman on a height. As marching armies approaching an unfriendly defile in the mountains accelerate their march, all eagerness to place that perilous passage in their rear, and once more expand in comparative security upon the plain. Even so did this vast fleet of whales now seem hurrying forward through the straits, gradually contracting the wings of their semicircle, and swimming on in one solid but still crescentic centre. Crowding all sail, the Pequod pressed after them, the harpooneers handling their weapons and loudly cheering from the heads of their yet suspended boats. If the wind only held, little doubt they had that chased through these straits of Sunda, the vast hosts would only deploy into the oriental seas to witness the capture of not a few of their number. And who could tell whether in that congregated caravan Moby Dick himself might not temporarily be swimming, like the worshipped white elephant in the coronation procession of the Siamese. So, with stun sail piled on stun sail, we sailed along, driving these leviathans before us. When of a sudden the voice of Testigo was heard, loudly directing attention to something in our wake, corresponding to the crescent in our van. We beheld another in the rear. It seemed formed of detached white vapors, rising and falling something like the spouts of the whales, only they did not so completely come and go, for they constantly hovered, without finally disappearing. Leveling his glass at this sight, Ahab quickly revolved in his pivot hole, crying, "Aloft there, and rig whips and buckets to wet the sail! Malays, sir, and after us!" As if too long lurking behind the headlands, till the Pequods should fairly have entered the straits, these rascally Asiatics were now in hot pursuit, to make up for their ever-cautious delay. But when the swift Pequod, with a fresh leading wind, was herself in hot chase, how very kind of these tawny philanthropists to assist in speeding her on to her own chosen pursuit. Mere riding whips and rowels to her that they were. As with glass under arm, Ahab to and fro paced the deck, in his forward turn holding the monsters in chase, and in the after one the bloodthirsty pirates chasing him. Some such fancy as the above seemed his. and when he glanced upon the green walls of the water defile in which the ship was then sailing, and bethought him that through that gate lay the route to his vengeance, and beheld how that through that same gate he was now both chasing and being chased to his deadly end. And not only that, but a herd of remorseless wild pirates and inhuman aesthetical devils were infernally cheering him on with their curses. When all these conceits had passed through his brain, Ahab's brow was left gaunt and ribbed, like the black sand beach after some stormy tide had been gnawing it, without being able to drag the firm thing from its place. But thoughts like these troubled very few of the reckless crew, and when after steadily dropping the pirates astern, the Pequod was last shot by the vivid green Cockatoo Point on the Sumatra side, emerging at last upon the broad waters beyond. Then the harpooneers seemed more to grieve that the swift whales had been gaining upon the ship, than to rejoice that the ship had so victoriously gained upon the Malays. But still driving on in the wake of the whales, at length they seemed abating their speed. Gradually the ship neared them, and the wind now dying away, word was passed to spring to the boats. But no sooner did the herd, by some presumed wonderful instinct of the sperm whale, become notified of the 3 keels that were after them, though as yet a mile in their rear. Then they rallied again and formed in close ranks and battalions, so that their spouts all looked like flashing lines of stacked bayonets, moved on with redoubled velocity. Hydrate. Stripped to our shirts and drawers, we sprang to the white ash, and after several hours pulling were almost disposed to renounce the chase, when a general pausing commotion among the whales gave animating tokens that they were now at last under the influence of that strange perplexity of inert irresolution, which, when the fishermen perceive it in the whale, they say he is gallied. The compact martial columns in which they had been hitherto rapidly and steadily swimming were now broken up in one measureless rout, and like King Porus' elephants in the Indian battle with Alexander, they seemed going mad with consternation. In all directions expanding in vast irregular circles, and aimlessly swimming hither and thither by their short thick spoutings, they plainly betrayed their distraction of panic. This was still more strangely evinced by those of their number, who, completely paralyzed as it were, helplessly floated like waterlogged dismantled ships on the sea. Had these leviathans been but a flock of simple sheep, pursued over the pasture by 3 fierce wolves, they could not possibly have evinced such excessive dismay. But this occasional timidity is characteristic of almost all herding creatures. Though banding together in tens of thousands, the lion-maned buffaloes of the West have fled before a solitary horseman. Witness, too, all human beings, how, when herded together in the sheepfold of a theatre's pit, they will, at the slightest alarm of fire, rush helter-skelter for the outlets, crowding, trampling, jamming, and remorselessly dashing each other to death. Best, therefore, withhold any amazement at the strangely gallied whales before us. For there is no folly of the beast of the earth which is not infinitely outdone by the madness of men. Though many of the whales, as has been said, were in violent motion, yet it is to be observed that as a whole the herd neither advanced nor retreated, but collectively remained in one place. As is customary in those cases, the boats at once separated, each making for some one lone whale on the outskirts of the shoal. In about 3 minutes' time, Queequeg's harpoon was flung. The stricken fish darted blinding spray in our faces, and then running away with us like light, steered straight for the heart of the herd. Though such a movement on the part of the whale struck under such circumstances is in no wise unprecedented, and indeed is almost always more or less anticipated, yet does it present one of the more perilous vicissitudes of the fishery. For as the swift monster drags you deeper and deeper into the frantic shoal, you bid adieu to circumspect life, and only exist in a delirious throb. As blind and deaf, the whale plunged forward, as if by sheer power of speed to rid himself of the iron leech that had fastened it to him. As we thus tore a white gash in the sea, on all sides menaced as we flew, by the crazed creatures to and fro rushing about us, our beset boat was like a ship mobbed by ice isles in a tempest, and striving to steer through complicated channels and straits, knowing not at what moment it may be locked in and crushed. But not a bit daunted, Queequeg steered us manfully, now sheering off from his monster directly across our route in advance, now edging away from that whose colossal flukes were suspended overhead, while all the time Starbuck stood up in the bows, lance in hand, pricking out of our way whatever whales he could reach by short darts. For there were no time to make long ones. Nor were the oarsmen quite idle. Though their wonted duty was now altogether dispensed with, they chiefly attended to the shouting part of the business. "Out of the way, Commodore!" cried one, to a great dromedary that of a sudden rose bodily to the surface, and for an instant threatened to swamp us. "Hard down with your tail there!" cried a second to another, which, close to our gunwale, seemed calmly cooling himself with his own fan-like extremity. All whaleboats carry certain curious contrivances, originally invented by the Nantucket Indians, called drugs. 2 thick squares of wood of equal size are stoutly clenched together, so that they cross each other's grain at right angles. A line of considerable strength is then attached to the middle of this block, and the other end of the line being looped, it can in a moment be fastened to a harpoon. It is chiefly among gallied whales that this drug is used, for then more whales are close around you than you can possibly chase at one time. But sperm whales are not every day encountered. While you may then, you must kill all you can. And if you cannot kill them all at once, you must wing them, so that they can be afterwards killed at your leisure. Hence it is that at times like these the drug comes into requisition. Our boat was furnished with 3 of them. The first and second were successfully darted, and we saw the whale staggeringly running off, fettered by the enormous sidelong resistance of the towing drug. They were cramped like malefactors, with the chain and ball. But upon flinging the third, in the act of tossing overboard the clumsy wooden block, it caught under one of the seats of the boat, and in an instant tore it out and carried it away, dropping the oarsman in the boat's bottom as the seat slid from underneath him. On both sides the sea came in at the wounded planks, but we stuffed 2 or 3 drawers of shirts in, and we stopped the leaks for the time. This is sounding really rough. Let me see. Ah, here we go. Christopher is back in the show. Eats a triangular sandwich. Nice. What's on that triangular sandwich? Well, Friday is not that far from now. Alright, where was I? Okay, we have stopped the leaks. Let's see. Can I read for you? I promise I won't block my mic. Chicken aioli, chicken bacon, semi-dried tomato and crispy salad mix. Sounds interesting. I don't know what aioli is. Keeps fingers crossed behind his back. Well, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages left. I should be able to finish in time. What is this now? Why is that open? I thought I closed that. Take one more small sip. Aioli is a cold sauce consisting of an emulsion of garlic and olive oil. Oh. Okay. Here we know it as what do we call it? I don't really think I don't actually know what we call it here. But garlic and oil or something like that. We have a very simple name for that. No, I didn't want a lobster. No! Then what did you want, sir? Oh, a bike. You're still looking for a bike? Didn't you catch a bike that one time? Alrighty. Let me finish this before break comes. Okay, so we had stopped the leaks from the hole in the boat. It had been next to impossible to dart these drugged harpoons, were it not that as we advanced into the herd, our whale's way greatly diminished. Moreover, that as we went still further and further from the circumference of commotion, the direful disorders seemed waning, so that when at last the jerking harpoon drew out, and the towing whale sideways vanished, then, with the tapering force of his parting momentum, we glided between two whales into the innermost heart of the shoal. As if from some mountain torrent we had slid into a serene valley lake. Here the storms in the roaring glens between the outermost whales were heard but not felt. In the central expanse the sea presented that smooth satin-like surface called a sleek, produced by the subtle moisture blown off by the whales in the most quiet moods. In his most quiet moods. Yes, we were now in that enchanted calm which they say lurks at the heart of every commotion. And still in the distracted distance we beheld the tumults of the outer eccentric circles, and saw successive pods of whales, 8 or 10 in each, swiftly going round and round, like multiplied spans of horses in a ring, and so closely shoulder to shoulder, that a titanic circus rider might easily have overreached the middle ones, and so have gone round on their backs. Owing to the density of the crowd of reposing whales, more immediately surrounding the embayed axis of the herd, no possible chance of escape was at present afforded us. We must watch for a breach in the living wall that hemmed us in, the wall that had only admitted us in order to shut us up. Keeping at the center of the lake, we were occasionally visited by small tame cows and calves, the women and children of this roted host. Now inconclusive of the occasional wide intervals between the revolving outer circles, and inclusive of the spaces between the various pods in any one of these circles, the entire area at this junction embraced by the whole multitude must have contained at least 2 or 3 square miles. At any rate, though indeed such a test at such a time might be deceptive, spoutings might be discovered from our low boat that seemed playing up almost from the rim of the horizon. I mention this circumstance because, as if the cows and calves had been purposely locked up in the innermost fold, and as if the wide extent of the herd had hitherto prevented them from learning the precise cause of its stopping, or possibly being so young, unsophisticated, and in every way innocent, and inexperienced. However it may have been, these smaller whales, now and then visiting our becalmed boat from the margin of the lake, evinced a wondrous fearlessness and confidence, or else a still becharmed panic, which it was impossible not to marvel at. Like household dogs, they came sniffing around us, right up to our gunwales and touching them, till it almost seemed that some spell had suddenly domesticated them. Quick petted their foreheads. Starbuck scratched their backs with his lance, but fearful of the consequences for the time refrained from darting it. But far beneath this wondrous world upon the surface, another and still stranger world met our eyes as we gazed over the side. For suspended in those watery vaults floated the forms of the nursing mothers of the whales, and those that by their enormous girth seemed shortly to become mothers. The lake, as I have hinted, was a considerable depth, exceedingly transparent, and as human infants while suckling will calmly and fixedly gaze away from the breast, as if leading two different lives at the same time, and while yet drawing mortal nourishment, be still spiritually feasting upon some unearthly reminiscence. Even so did the young of these whales seem, looking up towards us, but not at us, as if we were but a bit of gulfweed in their newborn sight. Floating on their sides, the mothers also seemed quietly eyeing us. One of these little infants, that from certain queer tokens seemed hardly a day old, might have measured some 14 feet in length and some 6 feet in girth. He was a little frisky, though as yet his body seemed scarce yet recovered from that irksome position it had so lately occupied in the maternal reticule, where, tail to head, and all ready to the final spring, the unborn whale lies bent like a Tartar's bow. The delicate side fins and the palms of his flukes still freshly retained the plated, crumpled appearance of a baby's ears newly arrived from foreign parts. "Line! Line!" cried Queequeg, looking over the gunwale. "Him fast! Him fast! Who line him? Who struck?" "Two whale, one big, one little." "What ails ye, man?" cried Starbuck. Look here, said Queequeg, pointing down, as when the stricken whale from the tub was reeled out hundreds of fathoms of ropes, as after deep sounding he floats up again, and shows the slackened curling line buoyantly rising and spiraling towards the air. Though now Starbuck saw long coils of the umbilical cord of Madame Leviathan, by which the young cubs seemed still tethered to its dam. Not seldom in the rapid vicissitudes of the chase, this natural line with the maternal end loose becomes entangled with the hempen one, so that the cub is thereby trapped. Some of the subtlest secrets of the sea seem divulged to us in this enchanted pond. We saw young Leviathan amours in the deep, and thus, though surrounded by circle upon circle of consternations and afrites, did these inscrutable creatures at the center freely and fearlessly indulge in all peace concernments, yet serenely revelled in dalliance and delight. But even so, amid the tornadoed Atlantic of my being, do I myself still forever centrally disport in mute calm, and while ponderous planets of unwaning woe revolve around me, deep down and deep inland, there I still bathe me in eternal mildness of joy. Meanwhile, as we thus lay entranced, the occasional sudden frantic spectacles of the distance evinced the activity of the other boats, still engaged in drugging the whales on the frontier of the host, or possibly carrying on the war within the first circle, where abundance of room and some convenient retreats were afforded them. But the sight of the enraged, drugged whales now and then blindly darting to and fro across the circles was nothing to what at last met our eyes. It is sometimes the custom when fast to a whale, more than commonly powerful and alert, to seek to hamstring him, as it were, by sundering or maiming his gigantic tail tendon. It is done by darting a short-handled cutting spade, to which is attached a rope for hauling it back again. A whale wounded, as were afterwards learned, in this part, but not effectually, as it seemed, had broken away from the boat, carrying along with him half of the harpoon line, and in the extraordinary agony of the wound, he was now dashing among the revolving circles, like the lone-mounted desperado Arnold, at the Battle of Saratoga, carrying dismay wherever he went. But agonizing as was the wound of this whale, and an appalling spectacle enough, anyway, yet this peculiar horror with which he seemed to inspire the rest of the herd was owing to a cause which at first were intervening distance obscured from us. But at length we perceived that by one of the unimaginable accidents of the fishery, this whale had become entangled in the harpoon line that he towed. He had also run away with the cutting spade in him, and while the free end of the rope attached to that weapon had permanently caught in the coils of the harpoon line around his tail, the cutting spade itself had worked loose from his flesh. So that, tormented to madness, he was now churning through the water, violently flailing with his flexible tail, and tossing the keen spade about him, wounding and murdering his own comrades. This terrific object seemed to recall the whole herd from their stationary fright. First, the whales forming the margin of our lake began to crowd a little, and tumble against each other, as if lifted by half-spent billows from afar. Then the lake itself began faintly to heave and swell. The submarine bridal chambers and nurseries vanished. In more and more contracting orbits, the whales in the more central circles began to swim in thickening clusters. Yes, the long calm was departing. A low advancing hum was soon heard, and then, like the tumultuous masses of block ice when the great river Hudson breaks up in spring, the entire host of whales came tumbling upon their inner circle, as if to pile themselves upon in one common mountain. Instantly Starbuck and Queequeg changed places, Starbuck taking the stern. "Oars, oars!" he intensely whispered, seizing the helm. "Grip your oars and clutch your souls now! My God, men, stand by! Shove him off! You Queequeg, the whale there! Prick him! Hit him! Stand up and stay so! Spring, men! Pull, men! Never mind their backs! Scrape 'em! Scrape away!" The boat was now all but jammed between two vast black bulks, leaving a narrow Dardanelles, whatever that is, between their long lengths. But by desperate endeavor we at last shot into a temporary opening, then, giving way rapidly, and at the same time earnestly watching for another outlet. After many similar hair-breadth escapes, we at last swiftly glided into what had just been one of the outer circles, but now crossed by random whales, all violently making for one center. This lucky salvation was cheaply purchased by the loss of Queequeg's hat, who, while standing in the bows to prick the fugitive whales, had his hat taken clean from his head by the air eddy made by the sudden tossing of a pair of broad flukes close by. Riotous and disordered as the universal commotion now was, it soon resolved itself into what seemed a systematic movement. For having clumped together at last in one dense body, they then renewed their onward flight with augmented fleetness. Further pursuit was useless, but the boats still lingered in their wake to pick up the drugged whales. What drugged whales might be dropped astern, and likewise to secure one which Flask had killed and waifed. The waif is a pinned hole, 2 or 3 of which are carried by every boat, and when additional game is at hand, are inserted upright into the floating body of a dead whale, both to mark its place on the sea and also as token of prior possession, should the boats of any other ship draw near. The result of this lowering was somewhat illustrative of that sagacious saying in the fishery, "The more whales, the less fish." Of all the drugged whales, only one was captured. The rest contrived to escape for the time, but only to be taken, as will hereafter be seen, by some other craft than the Pequod. I managed to finish just in time. I have 1 minute left. Goodness. There we go. There is the alarm for the break, and I am wiped out. I was pushing it so I could finish in time before the break. How long until you break? Hands the traffic cone over to Jen. Just hand it over to some road workers next time you see some. Traffic cone. Christopher's still looking for his bike. And Jen reluctantly takes it. Traffic cone. Alright, okay, we shall continue on chapter 91, because these other 2 chapters, or 3 chapters, are some side story, which I'm not interested in. So, we shall continue with chapter 91 when we come back from our break. We are getting there, folks. We are getting there. That is shrinking quite a bit. Can't wait to reach the end. That's for sure. Thank you, Jen. I will definitely have a nice break. Shoo. I'm taking a break before my break. Because 30 minutes is not always enough. I've actually considered making my breaks 45 minutes. Would you also like to read a book upside down in the future? I wouldn't mind doing that, because I can read upside down. I wouldn't really say it's all that difficult, but it is definitely more challenging. But it will have to be a smaller story. Please do what? We all get older, yeah. If you say, if you mean please do makes the breaks longer, then I would gladly. Lord of the Rings. I don't have those books. Unfortunately. I still want to watch the movies. Yeah, because I'm so wiped out I forgot why I'm holding my phone. Alright. 30 minutes on the clock. Raise the break to 45 minutes after you had 4 hours. Now, if I had 4 hours, I would, like 4 hours non-stop, then I would take a full hour of rest. Maybe even longer. But probably a full hour. I used to stream like 6-7 hours. That was when it was during the day. Those were long hours. I also used to stream a lot more often. A lot more often with so many hours? Yeah, I've learned to pace myself. I'm still here though. Alrighty, well, at least I don't have to worry about my food taking too long, so we'll keep to the customary 30 minutes. Bike. Alright, let's see what you get. You can get a can, let's go. You can heat something up in it. Alrighty, folks. Time for our break. I hope you all have yourselves an awesome break. Grab yourself something to eat, something to drink. Stretch out them limbs. Maybe go for a walk or something. Get that blood flowing again. And I shall see you guys after the break. Let me know what you had for munchies or drinks or snacks. BRB. Hello, hello, welcome back. Hope you all had a lovely break. What did you all have for munchies? Oh man, the ad break started right at the weirdest time. You stepped on your own toe? No! How dare you step on your own toe? That's not allowed. Alright, seems like the music is a tad loud on this one. Is that why you screamed? Ooh. I had like a cold beverage. And now I'm cold. You had air for food? Does that count? No. No, it does not count. You cannot eat air, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I guess. I'm not sure which one that would be. We shall wait for the advert to finito. So yeah, I had a piece of chicken from earlier and a bun. And then I had like a mystery flavored milky. So now I'm cold. You're so tired and all that you laugh at anything. And of course I washed my hands, so now my hands are cold too. Okay. Let us carry on then, shall we? Chapter 91. The Pequod meets the Rosebud. In vain it was to rake for ambergris in the paunch of this leviathan, unsufferable fetter denying not inquiry. Sir T. Brownie, or Brown, V.E. I have no idea who that is, and I don't understand the so-called saying. Yay! Welcome back to you too, Jen. Yes, welcome back, Jen. Welcome back. Good to see everyone in the chat. It was a week or two after the last whaling scene recounted, and when we were slowly sailing over a sleepy, vapory midday sea, that the many noses of the Pequod's deck proved more vigilant discoverers than the 3 pairs of eyes aloft. A peculiar and not very pleasant smell was smelt in the air, or in the sea. "I will bet something now," said Stubb, "that somewhere hereabouts are some of those drugged whales we tickled the other day. I thought they would keel up before long." Presently the vapors in advance slid aside, and there in the distance lay a ship, whose furled sails betokened that some sort of whale must be alongside. As we glided nearer, the stranger showed French colours from his peak, and by the eddying cloud of vulture seafowl that circled and hovered and swooped around him, it was plain that the whale alongside must be what the fishermen call a basalt whale, or a blasted whale. That is, a whale that has died unmolested in the sea, and so floated an unappropriated corpse. It may well be conceived what an unsavory odor such a mass must exhale. Worse than an Assyrian city in the plague, when the living were incompetent to bury the departed. So intolerable indeed is it regarded by some, that no cupidity could persuade them to moor alongside of it. Yet are there those who will still do it, notwithstanding the fact that the oil obtained from such objects is of a very inferior quality, and by no means of the nature of attar of rose. Coming still nearer with the expiring breeze, we saw that the Frenchman had a second whale alongside. And the second whale seemed even more of a nosegay than the first. In truth, it turned out to be one of those problematical whales that seem to dry up and die with a sort of prodigious dyspepsia or indigestion, leaving their defunct bodies almost entirely bankrupt of anything like oil. Nevertheless, in the proper place we shall see that no knowing fisherman will ever turn up his nose at such a whale as this, however much he may shun blasted whales in general. The Pequod had now swept so nigh to the stranger that Stubb vowed he recognized his cutting spade pole entangled in the lines that were knotted around the tail of one of these whales. "There's a pretty fellow now," he banteringly laughed, standing in the ship's bows. "There's a jackal for ye. I well knew that these crapauds of Frenchmen are but poor devils in the fishery, sometimes lowering their boats for breakers, mistaking them for sperm whale spouts. Yes, and sometimes sailing from their port with their hold full of boxes of tallow, candles, and cases of snuffers, foreseeing that all the oil they will get won't be enough to dip the captain's wick into. Aye, we all know these things, but look ye, here's a crapo that is content with our leavings. The drugged whale there, I mean. Aye, and is content too with scraping the dry bones of that other precious fish he has there. Poor devil! I say, pass round a hat, someone, and let's make him a present of a little oil for dear charity's sake. For what oil he'll get from that drugged whale there wouldn't be fit to burn in a jail." No, not in a condemned cell. And as for the other whale, why, I'll agree to get more oil by chopping up and trying out these 3 masts of ours than he'll get from that bundle of bones. Though now that I think of it, it may contain something worth a good deal more than oil. Yes, ambergris. I wonder now if our old man has thought of that. It's worth trying. Yes, I'm for it. And so saying, he started for the quarterdeck. By this time the faint air had become a complete calm, so that whether or no, the Pequod was now fairly entrapped in the smell, with no hope of escaping except by its breezing up again. Issuing from the cabin, Stubb now called his boat's crew and pulled off for the stranger. Drawing across her bow, he perceived that in accordance with the fanciful French taste, the upper part of her stem piece was carved in the likeness of a huge, drooping stalk. Was painted green, and for thorns had copper spikes projecting from it here and there, the whole terminating the whole terminating in a symmetrical folded bulb of a bright red color. Upon her headboards, in large gilt letters, he read, Bouton de Rose. Rose button, or rosebud. And this was the romantic name of their aromatic ship. Though Stubb did not understand the bouton part of the inscription. Yet the word rose and the bulbous figurehead put together sufficiently explained the whole to him. A wooden rosebud, eh? He cried with his hand to his nose. That will do very well, but how like all creation it smells. Now, in order to hold direct communication with the people on deck, he had to pull round the bows to the starboard side, and thus come close to the blasted whale, and so talk over it. Arrived then at this point, with one hand still to his nose, he bawled, Bouton de Rose, ahoy! Are there any of you Bouton de Roses that speak English? Yes, rejoined a Guernsey man from the bulwarks, who turned out to be the chief mate. Well then, my Bouton de Rose bud, have you seen the white whale? A what whale? The white whale, a sperm whale, Moby Dick, have you seen him? Never heard of such a whale. Cachalot Blanche. White whale? No. Very good then. Goodbye now, and I'll call again in a minute. Then rapidly pulling backwards toward the Pequod and seeing Ahab leaning over the quarter-deck rail, awaiting his report, he molded his 2 hands into a trumpet and shouted, No, sir, no! Upon which Ahab retired, and Stubb returned to the Frenchman. He now perceived that the Guernsey man who had just got into the chains and was using a cutting spade had slung his nose in a sort of bag. What's the matter with your nose there? Said Stubb. Broke it? I wish it was broken, or that I didn't have any nose at all, answered the Guernsey man, who did not seem to relish the job he was at very much. But what are you holding yours for? The way they're talking about the noses. Okay, let me catch up with chat real quick. Take a small break here. Not feeling as allergic as the past 2 weeks. I think the level of birch tree pollen is getting lowered. Claudius, hello! Thank you for the lurk. Why is he called a sperm whale? What makes him different to any other male whale? Sperm whale is a general term used for the cachalot, because back in the day they thought that the liquid inside the head were sperm when it wasn't sperm. It's a different kind of substance altogether, but they call it spermaceti, or spermaceti or permaceti or something like that. But the actual true name is cachalot. Yes. And I prefer the name cachalot because it's a much nicer name. And cachalot, cache meaning storage, because it's got a big head with a lot of stuff in there. Cachalot makes more sense. Okay, but what are you holding yours for? Oh, nothing. It's a wax nose. I have to hold it on. Fine day, ain't it? Air rather gardeny, I should say. Throw us a bunch of posies, will ya? Button the rose. What in the devil's name do you want here? Roared the Gornsey man, flying into a sudden passion. Oh, keep cool. Cool, yes, that's the word. Why don't you pack those whales in ice while you're working at them? But joking aside, though, do you know, Rosebud, that it's all nonsense trying to get any oil out of such whales? As for that dried-up one there, he hasn't a gill in his whole carcass. I know that well enough, but you see, the captain here won't believe it. This is his first voyage. He was a cologne manufacturer before. But come aboard and mayhap he'll believe you, if he won't me, and so I'll get out of this dirty scrape. Anything to oblige ye, my sweet and pleasant fellow, rejoined Stubb, and with that he soon mounted to the deck. There a queer scene presented itself. The sailors in tasseled caps and red worsted were getting the heavy tackles in readiness for the whales, but they worked rather slow and talked very fast, and seemed in anything but a good humor. All their noses upwardly projected from their faces like so many jabooms. Now and then pairs of them would drop their work and run up to the masthead to get some fresh air. Shame, the poor guys. Some, thinking they would catch the plague, dipped oakum in coal tar and at intervals held it to their nostrils. Others, having broken the stems of their pipes almost short off at the bowl, were vigorously puffing tobacco smoke so that it constantly filled their olfactories. Stubb was struck by a shower of outcries and anathemas proceeding from the captain's roundhouse abaft, and looking in that direction saw a fiery face thrust from behind the door, which was held ajar from within. This was the tormented surgeon, who, after in vain remonstrating against the proceedings of the day, had betaken himself to the captain's roundhouse. Or cabinet, he called it, to avoid the pest. But still, could not help yelling out his entreaties and indignations at times. Marking all this, Stubb argued well for his scheme, and turned to the Guernsey man, had a little chat with him, during which the stranger mate expressed his detestation of his captain, and as a conceited ignoramus, who had brought them into so unsavory and unprofitable a pickle. So he's not very impressed. A kaskalot in Swedish. Ah, okay. Big head with a lot of stuff in there. Sounds like mine. Sounds like mine too. At least a lot of nuts and bolts scrambling around. Yeah, I've got nuts, bolts, spanners, all kinds of other tools, and a lot of like power tools, and all of them are on at the same time. It's quite chaotic. Sounding him carefully, Stubb further perceived that the Guernsey man had not the slightest suspicion concerning the ambergris. He therefore held his peace on that head, but otherwise was quite frank and confidential with him, so that the two quickly concocted a little plan for both circumventing and satirizing the captain, without his at all dreaming of distrusting their sincerity. According to this little plan of theirs, the Guernsey man, under cover of an interpreter's office, was to tell the captain what he pleased, but as coming from Stubb, and as for Stubb, he was to utter any nonsense that should come uppermost in him during the interview. By this time, their distant victim appeared from his cabin. He was a small and dark, but rather delicate-looking man for a sea captain, with large whiskers and moustache, however, and wore a red cotton velvet vest with watch seals at his side. To this gentleman, Stubb was now politely introduced by the Guernsey man, who at once ostentatiously put on the aspect of interpreting between them. "What shall I say to him first?" said he. "Why," said Stubb, eyeing the velvet vest and watch and seals, "you may as well begin by telling him that he looks a sort of babyish to me, though I don't pretend to be a judge. He says, 'Monsieur,'" said the Guernsey man in French, turning to his captain, "that only yesterday his ship spoke a vessel, whose captain and chief mate, with 6 sailors, had all died of a fever caught from a blasted whale they had brought alongside." Upon this the captain started and eagerly desired to know more. "What now?" said the Guernsey man to Stubb. "Why, since he takes it so easy, tell him that, now I have eyed him carefully, I'm certain that he's no more fit to command a whale ship than St. Jago's monkey. In fact, tell him from me he's a baboon." Oh, wow. A baboon. He vows and declares, monsieur, that the other whale, the dried one, is far more deadly than the blasted one. In fine, monsieur, he conjures us, as we value our lives, to cut loose from these fish. Instantly the captain ran forward and in a loud voice commanded his crew to desist from hoisting the cutting tackles, and at once cast loose the cables and chains confining the whales to the ship. This is quite the picture. This guy's is like barefoot. And he's got shoes, and he's got shoes. What now? Said the Guernsey man when the captain had returned to them. Why, let me see. Yes, you may as well tell him now that in fact, tell him I've diddled him, and, aside to himself, perhaps somebody else. He says, monsieur, that he's very happy to have been of any service to us. Hearing this, the captain vowed that they were the grateful parties, meaning himself and mate, and concluded by inviting Stubb down into his cabin to drink a bottle of Bordeaux. He wants you to take a glass of wine with him, said the interpreter. Thank him heartily, but tell him it's against my principles to drink with the man I've diddled. In fact, tell him I must go. He says, monsieur, that his principles won't admit of his drinking, but that if monsieur wants to live another day to drink, then monsieur had best drop all 4 boats and pull the ship away from these whales, for it's so calm, they won't drift. Wow. So he wants... this mate wants to get rid of all the boats? Good grief. By this time, Stubb was over the side, and getting into his boat, hailed the Guernsey man to this effect, that having a long tow line in his boat, he would do what he could to help them, by pulling out the lighter whale of the 2 from the ship's side, while the Frenchmen's boats then were engaged in towing the ship one away. Okay, so not to get rid of the ship, the little boats, to get rid of the whales. Alright. It sounds a little bit better. Stubb benevolently towed away at his whale the other way, ostentatiously slacking out a most unusually long tow line. Presently a breeze sprang up. Stubb feigned to cast off from the whale. Hoisting his boats, the Frenchman soon increased his distance, while the Pequod slid in between him and Stubb's whale. Whereupon Stubb quickly pulled to the floating body and hailed the Pequod to give notice of his intentions at once, proceeding to reap the fruit of his unrighteous cunning. I think it's only right that he didn't take that wine after all. It was chore time around here? Well, it's good to have you back. Seizing his sharp boat spade, he commenced an excavation in the body, a little behind the side foot. He would almost have thought he was digging a cellar there in the sea, and when at length his spade struck against the gaunt ribs, it was like turning up old Roman tiles and pottery buried in fat English loam. His boat's crew were all in high excitement, eagerly helping their chief and looking anxious as gold hunters. And all the time numberless fowls were diving and ducking and screaming and yelling and fighting around them. Stubb was beginning to look disappointed, especially at the horrible nosegay increased, when suddenly, from out of the very heart of this plague, there stole a faint stream of perfume, which flowed through the tide of bad smells without being absorbed by it, as one river will flow into and then along with another, without at all blending with it for a time. I have it! cried Stubb, with delight striking something in the subterranean regions. "A purse! A purse!" Dropping his spade, he thrust both hands in and drew out handfuls of something that looked like ripe Windsor soap, or rich mottled old cheese. Very There's that word again. Very unctuous and savory withal. You might easily dent it with your thumb. It is of a hue between yellow and ash color, and this, good friends, is ambergris, worth a gold guinea an ounce to any druggist. Some 6 handfuls were obtained, but more was unavoidably lost in the sea. And still more, perhaps, might have been secured were it not for the impatient Ahab's loud command to Stubb to desist and come on board, else the ship would bid them goodbye. Deeds, prayers. We shall pray for you, O Christopher. Okay. We shall read this one. No skipping. Chapter 92. Ambergris. Now, this ambergris is a very curious substance, and so important as an article of commerce that in 1791 a certain Nantucket-born Captain Coffin was examined at the bar of the English House of Commons on that subject. For at that time, and indeed until a comparatively late day, the precise origin of ambergris remained, like amber itself, a problem to be learned. Though the word ambergris is but the French compound for grey amber, yet the two substances are quite distinct. For amber, though at times found on the sea coast, is also dug up in some far inland soils, whereas ambergris is never found except upon the sea. Besides, amber is a hard, transparent, brittle, odorless substance used for mouthpieces to pipes, for beads and ornaments, but ambergris is soft, waxy, and so highly fragrant and spicy that it is largely used in perfumery and pastils, precious candles, hair powders, and pomatum. What the heck is pomatum? I do have a Bible, but seems to not be working. I used to have one, but it's not in. It's called chapter verse. Why is it not working? I think maybe you need to type in the whole word, the whole name. Then I'm not sure what's going on. I'll have to look into that. The one I have is chapter verse. I think it just needed to be what you call it? Re-authenticated. Because sometimes Twitch wants you to reconnect things. So I think that's what happened. Not sure how this works. Oh, don't worry about it. It works in its own chat. So weird. I find that stuff. I don't think it would work. Since it's a bot. I don't see it in my list. It's not in my list. Even though it shows in my chat. Okay, it's just as a bot. So it doesn't show. I'm looking in the wrong place. Maybe it needs a moderator role in order to post? Perhaps? Well, I've given it a moderator role now. Now I've got 2 of them. No, that's not what I wanted to post. It needed moderator privileges. There we go. Problem solved. Because that was gonna annoy me the whole time. So I had to fix it. Yeah. I've noticed with some of these bots that they want moderator privileges. Don't know why, but there we go. There we have it, folks. Now I have 2 chapter-verse bots. It's so weird. If it works, I guess. Now, once it's given that privilege, it doesn't change up until I decide to take the role away. So, it's not anything to worry about, it'll stay. So, unless I remove it, it won't happen again. And the only thing that'll stop it from posting is if the bot breaks. Or is shut down by the developers. But there we go. Now it works. Yay! Alright, where was I? Ah yes, pomatum. The Turks use it in cooking, and also carry it to Mecca, for the same purpose that frankincense is carried to St. Peter's in Rome. Some wine merchants drop a few grains into claret to flavor it. Who would think then that such fine ladies and gentlemen should regale themselves with an essence found in the inglorious bowels of a sick whale? Yet so it is. By some, ambergris is supposed to be the cause, and by others the effect, of the dyspepsia in the whale. How to cure such a dyspepsia it were hard to say, unless the administering 3 or 4 boatloads of Brander's pills, and then running out of harm's way, as laborers do in blasting rocks. I have forgotten to say that there were found in this ambergris certain hard, round, bony plates, which at first Stubb thought might be sailors' trousers, buttons, but it afterwards turned out that they were nothing more than pieces of small squid bones embalmed in that manner. Squid bones. Yeah, I didn't change it until now. Because back when I did introduce the bot, it did post, so I don't know why it decided to stop posting. Maybe they did an update or something and then suddenly it required to be a moderator? I don't know. Anything is possible at this point, I guess. Now that the incorporation of this most fragrant ambergris should be found in the heart of such decay, is this nothing? Bethink thee of that saying of St. Paul in Corinthians about corruption and incorruption, how that we are sown in dishonor, but raised in glory. And likewise call to mind that saying of is it Paracelsus or Paracelsus? Somebody please help me with the pronunciation of this name. Anyway, I'll just call him Paracelsus. Saying of Paracelsus about what it is that maketh the best musk. Also forget not the strange fact that of all things of ill savour, cologne water in its rudimental manufacturing stages is the worst. I should like to conclude the chapter with the above appeal, but cannot, owing to my anxiety to repel a charge often made against whalemen, and which, in the estimation of some already biased minds, might be considered as indirectly substantiated by what has been said of the Frenchman's 2 whales. Elsewhere in this volume, the slanderous aspersion has been disproved that the vocation of whaling is throughout a slatternly, untidy business. But there is another thing to rebut. They hint that all whales always smell bad. Now how did this odious stigma originate? I opine that it is plainly traceable to the first arrival of the Greenland whaling ships in London, where more than 2 centuries ago. Because those whalemen did not then, and do not now, try out their oil at sea as the southern ships have always done, but cutting up the fresh blubber in small bits, thrust it through the bungholes of large casks, and carry it home in that manner. The shortness of the season in those icy seas, and the sudden and violent storms to which they are exposed, forbidding any other course. The consequence is that upon breaking into the hold and unloading one of these whale cemeteries in the Greenland dock, a savour is given for somewhat similar to that arising from excavating an old city graveyard for the foundations of a lying-in hospital. I partly surmise also that this wicked charge against whalers may be likewise imputed to the existence of on the coast of Greenland, in former times, of a Dutch village called Schmerenberg, or Smerenberg, which latter name is the one used by the learned Vogo von Slack in his great work on smells, a textbook on that subject. As its name imports, smear, fat, berg, to put up, this village was founded in order to afford a place for the blubber of the Dutch whale fleet to be tried out, without being taken home to Holland for that purpose. It was a collection of furnaces, fat kettles, and oil sheds. And when the works were full operation, certainly gave forth no very pleasant savour, but all this is quite different with the South Sea sperm whaler, which, in a voyage of 4 years perhaps, after completely filling her hold with oil, does not perhaps consume 50 days in the business of boiling out, and in the state that it is casked. Casked, the oil is nearly scentless. The truth is that living or dead, if but decently treated, Whales, as a species, are by no means creatures of ill odor. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think they smell. Nor can whalemen be recognized as the people of the Middle Ages affected to detect a Jew in the company by the nose. Nor indeed can the whale possibly be otherwise than fragrant, when, as a general thing, he enjoys such high health, taking abundance of exercise, always out of doors, though, it is true, seldom in the open air. I say that the motion of a sperm whale's flukes above water dispenses a perfume, as when a musk-scented lady rustles her dress in a warm parlour. What then shall I liken the sperm whale to for fragrance, considering his magnitude? Must it not be to that famous elephant, with jewelled tusks, and redolent with myrrh, which was led out of an Indian town to do honour to Alexander the Great? Language is so foreign to me, almost like it's not English. I know, the way they speak is fascinating. So you said it correctly. Okay, I said it correctly. Cool. You're reading the same text in a PDF of the book? Cool. So you're reading along, are you? This is gonna be intense. You just started to catch up? Cool. Hydrate. I have to say, today's reading has been quite intense. I'm not okay, I might actually finish this chapter before my alarm goes off. You caught the hermit crab, let's go. I need a haircut. But yeah, I have to be careful when I do a haircut. I need to get me some clips to hide my bald spot. You've actually held a real hermit crab? Awesome. Bet it felt funny. With those little feet in the palm of your hand. And they can accidentally hurt you because they're so sharp. I've held, like normal crabs. Those little brown ones that you get around dams and rivers and things. They're kind of cool. They're very weird looking. those eyes. And yeah, those pincers are not fun. Thankfully, I haven't been pinched by any of them, but I've seen many a dog and my brothers especially getting pinched by them. Alright, let me see if I can fit this in and within this 20-minute time frame that I've got left. Which means our word discovery in the dictionary will most possibly go over time, but that's fine with me. Alrighty, Chapter 93, The Castaway. It was but some few days after encountering the Frenchman that a most significant event befell the most insignificant of the Pequod's crew. An event most lamentable, and which ended in providing the sometimes madly merry and predestined craft with a living and ever-accompanying prophecy of whatever shattered sequel might prove her own. Now, in the whale ship, it is not every one that goes in the boats. Some few hands are reserved, called shipkeepers, whose province it is to work the vessel while the boats are pursuing the whale. As a general thing, these shipkeepers are as hardy fellows as the men comprising the boat's crews. But if there happen to be an unduly slender, clumsy, or timorous wight in the ship, that wight is certain to be made a shipkeeper. It was so in the Pequod with the little negro Pippin by nickname, Pip by abbreviation. Poor Pip. Ye have heard of him before. Ye must remember the tambourine on that dramatic midnight, so gloomy jolly. In outer aspect, Pip and Doughboy made a match, like a black pony and a white one, of equal developments, though of dissimilar color, driven in one eccentric span. But while hapless Doughboy was by nature dull and torpid in his intellects, Pip, though over-tender-hearted, was at bottom very bright, with that pleasant, genial, jolly brightness peculiar to his tribe. A tribe which ever enjoy all holidays and festivities with finer, freer relish than any other race. For blacks, the year's calendar should show naught but 365 4th of Julys and New Year's days, nor smile so while I write that this little black was brilliant. For even blackness has its brilliancy. Behold yon lustrous ebony, panelled in king's cabinets. But Pip loved life, and all life's peaceable securities, so that the panic-striking business in which he had somehow unaccountably become entrapped had most sadly blurred his brightness. Though, as ere long will be seen, what was thus temporarily subdued in him, in the end was destined to be luridly illumined by strange wildfires that fictitiously showed him off to 10 times the natural luster with which in his native Tolland country, in Connecticut, he had once enlivened many a fiddler's frolic on the green, and at melodious eventide, with his gay ha-ha he turned the round horizon into one star-belled tambourine. So, though in the clear air of day, suspended against a blue-veined neck, the pure water diamond drop will healthful glow, yet when the cunning jeweler would show you the diamond in its most impressive luster, he lays it against a gloomy ground, and then lights it up, not by the sun, but by some unnatural gases. Then came out those fiery effulgences, infernally superb. Then the evil blazing diamond, once the divinest symbol of the crystal skies, looks like some crown jewel stolen from the king of hell. But let us to the story. It came to pass that in the ambergris affairs, Stubbs, after oarsman, chanced so to sprain his hand, as for a time to become quite maimed, and temporarily Pip was put into his place. Oh boy. The first time Stubb lowered with him, Pip evinced much nervousness, but happily, for that time, escaped close contact with the whale, and therefore came off not altogether discreditably, though Stubb, observing him, took care, afterwards, to exhort him to cherish his courageousness to the utmost, for he might often find it needful. Now, upon the second lowering, the boat paddled upon the whale, and as the fish received the darted iron, it gave its customary rap, which happened, in this instance, to be right under poor Pip's seat. The involuntary consternation of the moment caused him to leap, paddle in hand, out of the boat, and in such a way that part of the slack whale line coming against his chest. He breasted it overboard with him. Oh no. So as to become entangled in it, when at last plumping into the water. The instant the stricken whale started on a fierce run, the line swiftly straightened, and presto, poor Pip came all foaming up to the chocks of the boat, remorselessly dragged there by the line, which had taken several turns around his chest and neck. Dastigo stood in the bows. He was full of the fire of the hunt. He hated Pip for a poltroon. Snatching the boat knife from its sheath, he suspended its sharp edge over the line, and turning towards Stubb, exclaimed interrogatively, "Cut?" Meantime, Pip's blue, choked face plainly looked, "Do, for God's sake." All passed in a flash. In less than half a minute, this entire thing happened. "Damn him, cut!" roared Stubb. And so the whale was lost, and Pip was saved. Ah, poor Pip, I knew that disaster would strike. As soon as he recovered himself, the poor little negro was assailed by yells and execrations from the crew. Tranquilly permitting these irregular cursings to evaporate, Stubb then, in a plain, businesslike, but still half humorous manner, cursed Pip officially, and that done unofficially gave him much wholesome advice. The substance was, never jump from a boat, Pip, except, but all the rest was indefinite, as the soundest advice ever is. Now, in general, stick to the boat is your true motto in whaling, but cases will sometimes happen when leap from the boat is still better. Moreover, as if perceiving at last that if he should give undiluted conscientious advice to Pip, he would be leaving him too wide a margin to jump in for the future. Stubb suddenly dropped all advice and concluded with a peremptory command. Stick to the boat, Pip, or by the Lord, I won't pick you up if you jump. Mind that. We can't afford to lose whales by the likes of you. A whale would sell for 30 times what you would, Pip, in Alabama. Bear that in mind and don't jump anymore. Hereby perhaps Stubb indirectly hinted that though man loved his fellow, yet man is a money-making animal, which propensity too often interferes with his benevolence. But we are all in the hands of the gods, and Pip jumped again. It was under very similar circumstances to the first performance, but this time he did not breast out the line, and hence
I'm a computer. I'm a computery guy. Everything made out of buttons and wires.
Big fan of buzzes. Thank you for the 15 bits and that very interesting sound clip. And also welcome in. Why did that double? Because my speakers are a little bit loud. And it was picked up by my microphone. So that's why I doubled. Apologies about that. But welcome in, big fan of buses. How are you, friend? Thank you once again for those bits. Much appreciated. Alright. I'll just read there again. I gotta go to sleep. Love you to bits. God bless. God bless you too, Christopher. Thank you for being here. If it wasn't for Big Fan soundtrack, I wouldn't have even seen that. What does lamentable mean? Lamentable means... complainable, I guess? I can write that down and search that in the dictionary as well. And here we go. Alrighty. And how are you, big fan? I'm spacing out here. How much time do I have left? Not much. Alright, I don't think I'll be able to finish this before my timer runs. Alright. Anyway. Okay, but this time he did not breast out the line, and hence, when the whale started to run, Pip was left behind on the sea, like a hurried traveller's trunk. Alas, Stubb was but too true to his word. It was a beautiful, bounteous, blue day, the spangled sea calm and cool, and flatly stretched away, all round to the horizon like gold beater's skin hammered out to the extremest. Bobbing up and down in that sea, Pip's ebon head showed like a head of cloves. No boat knife was lifted when he fell so rapidly astern. Stubb's inexorable back was turned upon him, and the whale was winged. In 3 minutes a whole mile of shoreless ocean was between Pip and Stubb. Out from the center of the sea, poor Pip turned his crisp, curling black head to the sun, another lonely castaway, though the loftiest and the brightest. Now, in calm weather, to swim in the open ocean is as easy to the practiced swimmer as to ride in a spring carriage ashore. But the awful lonesomeness is intolerable. The intense concentration of self in the middle of such a heartless immensity, my God, who can tell it? Mark how when sailors in a dead calm bathe in the open sea. Mark how closely they hug their ship and only coast along her sides. But had Stubb really abandoned the poor little Negro to his fate? No, he did not mean to, at least, because there were 2 boats in his wake, and he supposed, no doubt, that they would of course come up to Pip very quickly, and pick him up, though, indeed, such considerations towards oarsmen, jeopardized through their own timidity, is not always manifested by the hunters in all similar instances. And such instances not unfrequently occur. Almost invariably in the fishery, a coward, so-called, is marked with the same ruthless detestation peculiar to military navies and armies. But it so happened that those boats, without seeing Pip, suddenly spying whales close to them on one side, turned and gave chase, and Stubb's boat was now so far away, and he and all his crew so intent upon his fish, that Pip's ringed horizon began to expand around him miserably. By the merest chance the ship itself at last rescued him, but from that hour the little Negro went about the deck an idiot. Such at least they said he was. The sea had jeeringly kept his finite body up. He drowned the infinite of his soul. But drowned the infinite of his soul. Not drowned entirely, though. Rather carried down alive to wondrous depths, where strange shapes of the unwarped primal world glided to and fro before his passive eyes, and the miser merman. Wisdom revealed his hoarded heaps, and among the joyous, heartless, ever juvenile eternities, Pip saw the multitudinous, God-omnipresent coral insects that out of the firmament of waters heaved the colossal orbs. He saw God's foot upon the treadle of the loom and spoke it, and therefore his shipmates called him mad. So man's insanity is heaven's sense, and wandering from all mortal reason, man comes at last to that celestial thought, which to reason is absurd and frantic, and weal or woe feels then uncompromised, indifferent as is God. For the rest, blame not Stubb too hardly. The thing is common in that fishery, and in the sequel of the narrative it will then be seen what like abandonment befell myself. I managed to make it to the end of this chapter. Yippee! With 2 minutes to spare, let's go! But we did in fact make good progress yet again. Look at that. That's some good progress right there. Tomorrow we shall continue with this one. Oh. This book is huge. Okay. Buttressed. And there's the alarm for me to go. Ah, here it is. For a moment I thought that this word does not exist. I couldn't find it at first. Buttress. Support for wall. A solid structure, usually made of brick or stone, that is built against a wall to support it. Ah, that's why the word seems familiar. Somebody or something that gives support. Somebody or something that acts as a source of support, help, and reinforcement. The Constitution is a buttress of our civil rights. Projecting rock. A large projecting rock mass that appears to support the rock above it. Hoof part. The pointed horny rear part of a horse's hoof. I've heard of that as well. Buttresses, buttressing, buttress. Support wall. To support a wall with a buttress. Support or reinforce something. To support or reinforce something, especially an argument, piece of analysis, or point of view. He buttressed his views with lengthy quotations from the scriptures. 14th century, from Old French butterez, or thrusting arch, from butter to butt, thrust against. Okay. I was gonna say support. Okay. Lamentable. I think he spelled it wrong. He spelled it L-E instead of L-A. But we found it. Okay, so not complain. It's more akin to grieving. Lament, lamented, dead or departed and grieved for. Lamentable, disappointingly bad, unsatisfactory, pitiful, or deplorable. Mournful, sad and mournful, literary. Lamentableness. Alrighty, so that is what it means. Lamentable is the disappointingly bad. Go with that one. Okay. Sequoias. Passive. Obsidian. Ah, found it. It's a little bit dark there. Let's see, maybe... Oops. You guys can see it. Yeah, there we go. Nice. Obsequious. Excessively eager to please or to obey all instructions. 15th century. From Latin obsequious. From obsequium, compliance. From obsequy. See absequent. Okay. Excessively eager to please. Cool. And our last word, promontory. Ah, this one was quite quick to find. Let's see, can I... Ah, here we go. Promontory. Projecting point of land. Point of land that juts out into the sea. Projecting part of body. A prominent or protruding part of the body. So like a nose, for example. Mid-16th century. From medieval Latin promontorium, an alteration of Latin promontorium, of uncertain origin, perhaps formed from mons, mountain. Interesting. There we go, and thus concludes everything book-based. It was quite the intense reading, I will say. So many words, so little time. Alrighty then. Let us find somebody to raid then, shall we? And I'm going to bring up the music volume a little bit. Okay, much a bit. Alright. Let's see who is online. If you have a suggestion, feel free to give suggestions. Righty. No suggestions in chat. I think we shall then go with I need to do my buttons. My shout out buttons. I have too many things to do and I don't know where to start. Alright, well, anyway. We've raided this guy before. Oh wait, there we go. Brother Dig. Ooh. You were just in time, Jen. You were just in time. Okay, let's check him out. Ah, he's playing World of Warcraft. I mean, didn't start too long ago either. Well, let's go. We have a fresh streamer, everyone. Alright. Brother Dig. Interesting name there. No, not at. Okay, so at. There we go, there is his shouty. Here we go. Let us go and check him out. Next time, just give him a shouty, Jen. That makes it easier. Then it's already done. But anyway, there he is. We shall go and raid him. Here is the raid message. Give that a sneaky little copy. And I will see you all in his chat. Whee! Thank you all for joining me today through this very intense reading because, wow, there was a lot of just solid pages of words. I was hoping for some more dialogue, but the dialogue was slim at best. But it's okay. We got through it. And we made some good progress. So I'm happy. Would have liked to make more progress. But that's how it is, I guess. Alrighty then. Time for a good old rest. I am wiped out. That is for sure. And take good care of yourselves, everybody. God bless. May you have a restful Monday, or not Monday, morning, afternoon, evening. If you're as tired as me, just go to sleep. See you all tomorrow for some more Moby Dick. And good night to you, Jen. Love you all. God bless. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.